Good Erev Shabbos, Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos just before Tisha B'Av. There's still time, please God, for things to turn around and for the situation to change. But it's a time of sadness. It's a time, the whole 9 days, the whole 3 weeks, it's a time of sadness. But it's important to look at that sadness and to see exactly what's going on with that. There's a difference between the word atzvut and the word avelut. There's a difference between the word despair, depression, unhappiness like that, and avelut, which means mourning. The word atzvus, it's like when you think there's no hope. When you think that you're useless, like the spies thought they were like grasshoppers when they went into the land to spy out the land of Israel, and they cried. And they made the whole people cry for no reason, and we ended up with the Tisha B'Av. Avelus, mourning, comes from the root word aval, but. In other words, despite the fact that you're down, and despite the fact that it hurts, there's a sense that there's something higher that is beyond the hurt and beyond the sorrow. We have a divine soul. We have a neshama that comes to us with infinite resources that actually enable us to be able to withstand any challenge that Hashem puts our way, because it's Hashem that gives us the powers in the soul. We live above, we have that divine source, but we also live down here. And it's a dark and it's an often challenging physical world, and sometimes it hurts. But not to give up. When we realize that we have a part of God literally inside of us, that we have an extension of Hashem as part and parcel of who we are, we should be able to take whatever comes. Okay? We're created in Hashem's image. And maybe that's the lesson from the spies that's reiterated and looked at again in this week's Parsha, as Moshe is reminding the Jewish people of some of the mistakes that they made along the way before they go into the land of Israel and they have to start fending for themselves. Not to give up, not to be depressed, to try and realize the godliness within each of us that enables us to have infinite resources and withstand any challenges. So the suggestion is that we're not so sad specifically because of the fact that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. It's actually the other way around. It was destroyed. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because we were sad and depressed unnecessarily for no reason. When the spies came back that day with the report of doom and gloom about the land of Israel, and everybody wept, we'd lost faith. We'd lost hope in the divine spark and essence inside of us. It's almost like a form of idolatry. And it's the opposite of what the temple was going to represent, going to express, godliness. And maybe that's why Hashem chose that day specifically for the tragedy to come many generations later when we lost our holy temple. Please God, it should speedily be rebuilt in our days. And to help that happen, we need to reconnect and affirm our godly soul, our godly core and essence, so that we can draw from that unlimited reservoir of potential and light and joyously challenge and confront life. It can also be asked why the spies, such great leaders as they were, failed so dismally in their mission. And maybe the answer to that is in the expression that the Torah uses, the word latur at the Aretz. They went to literally to tour the land. The English word tour is the same as in the Hebrew. What's a tourist? A tourist is somebody, probably think about, with a camera and a loud shirt, trying to capture and report on whatever they're observing. If there's no picture, it didn't happen. So busy trying to capture the experiences that he's not actually engaging in the experiences himself at all. They're almost in a state of exile, if you will, with the phenomenon of the situation that they're trying to observe. They have to be separate from it to take the picture of it, or to find somebody else to take the picture of it. It's almost a kind of a defense, this camera, and the tourists can safely kind of retreat behind their camera or observation. They're not really part and parcel of what's going on. So the spies never really connected to the Holy Land in a way that would allow them to really experience and live out that holiness and that specialness of the place. They went in as tourists, as different, as not belonging, almost like in a state of exile on their own tour to spy out the land. The end of the Parsha that the Spies are originally mentioned in Parsha Shalach, contains the third paragraph of the Shema about tzitzit. And the phraseology over there is very similar. You shouldn't go after your heart or after your eyes. You shouldn't stray. But it's actually, you shouldn't tour. Okay? Warning the Torah is that we shouldn't fall into the same trap that they fell into. In fact, it's such a fundamental lesson not to distance ourselves from the reality that we're part of, that it's the only negative commandment in the Torah that we mention twice daily. I mean, look at Moshe Rabbeinu on the other side. He was open to what life had to share and the messages of Hashem, no matter how subtle. I mean, remember at the burning bush how he paused to take a look, and here was something, and he could accommodate it. There wasn't sort of a cognitive dissonance. He could appreciate that there was something else going on. He turned aside to see the bush that was burning and wasn't being consumed. And Hashem saw that he turned. A very profound message. Our lives seem to be surrounded by war and destruction and hunger and illness and pandemic, and philosophers and scientists and physicians and politicians suggested all sorts of solutions. But we're just still seeing terrorist attacks, major disasters, more disease. You get the impression that matters are only getting worse. Every illness overcome is replaced by something even more serious, and every peace accord gets violated within the first 3 days. But that's a partial picture. It's built on a psychological condition that a lot of us suffer from, unfortunately, which is kind of a lashon hara, an evil speech, not about one or another person, but about the entire world, about reality. Evil speech is a kind of self-distrust that's rooted in our own inner security. If I can point out the faults of somebody else, then I show up better. There's a lot of good going on in the world. Most people are decent. Most people are law-abiding. Millions come home safe every night. Hundreds of thousands of planes used to land when they were flying without the slightest problem. Most children are born healthy. And the sun comes up every day without exception. Baruch Hashem, for those healthy enough, there's enough air for everybody. We live in a much higher economic standard than was ever experienced by our forefathers. Pain can be prevented on a much larger scale. Communication systems like the internet have brought us in touch with each other wherever we live and whatever the circumstances. There's so much going on that's so great. Yeah, the world isn't ideal, but it's like looking at a white piece of paper with a black dot on it, you know? If you ask, what do you see? Everybody sees a dot. Everybody sees a black mark. What about the whole paper? Okay, why is it the negative that catches our attention? Because the good confronts us with a problem. Good exposes us to a higher order of things. Good demands of us to think about the meaning of our lives, because it's the beauty of all of the good that touches our souls. And it embarrasses us, because we don't want to respond. What if life makes higher demands than I'm comfortable with? Okay? It's good, which reminds us that our lives do have a moral and religious purpose. So we set up a defense system. We emphasize the black spot. We deny the white paper. And our media help us by uncovering the disasters and the diseases. We speak lashon hara about our world, exaggerating all that's bad in this world, and that serves us well. We give it a bad name, so we're able to declare that we're okay as we are, where we are, that life is hard enough. Who's got time for meaning? Hashem was so glad that there was someone around who wasn't so stuck in preconceptions and tunnel vision, someone who could be open to what might be, to a message from a higher level, that when he relates to Moshe and introduces himself and says who he is, it's the most intimate name of Hashem that's used in the entire Torah. The only one that's in the first person. I am, or I will be what I will be. And that's the message of redemption, really. The attitude that enables a person to break free of their limitations, being open to what might be. That moment was a moment that Hashem decided to engage with us and to enter into a covenant with the entire people of Israel. And that was the very spot where 40 years later, the revelation at Mount Sinai would happen. And this is what we need to strive for on the Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbos of vision, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. Everybody should have a vision, because vision means seeing the truth. There are people who don't see reality at all. That's called blindness of spirit. And there are people who see facts as they present themselves, and that's called realism. And there are those who see truth, and those are people who are called visionaries. Truth with a capital T. What is it? The opposite of true is false. The opposite of truth is fact. Fact describes things as they are, not how they should be. War and suffering are facts. That's how they are. But surely it shouldn't be like that, and it shan't be like that forever. We have a prophecy of nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Truth describes things as they should be, as they must be, and ultimately will be. War, which is a fact, will give way to peace, which is truth. Sometimes the facts are in conflict with the truth. Remember when the Jewish people were leaving Egypt and they found themselves caught between the sea and the Egyptians behind them? What to do? Surrender, pray, fight? God says, none of the above. You just keep going forward. And what happened? The sea split. The fact was they couldn't proceed. The truth was that they had to get to Mount Sinai. In a face down between fact and truth, who surrenders to who? Fact surrenders to truth. They say that the bumblebee can't fly. Aerodynamically, it's so unsound that there's no way that it can fly. But nobody told the bumblebee that. So it flies. Facts have to be seen and dealt with, but truth has to be believed in. We're very good at dealing with facts of exile, the need to survive, to adapt, to deal with the pandemic, and it's helped us to survive. But our real secret strength is our undying vision. We never forgot how life should be, even when it wasn't. We'll wait for Mashiach because he must come, in spite of the fact that so far he hasn't. In the past, like with the splitting of the sea, or with Daniel in the lion's den, or Yonah in the sea, when facts surrendered to truth, we called it a miracle. When what happens to be gives way to what should be. Vision means seeing truth. Truth describes the way things should be. Hashem said, go forward and follow the truth, and fact will fall by the wayside. That's vision. We wait for Mashiach, for it must be, in spite of the fact that it hasn't happened yet. And we need to learn to fully engage and to be open in life to Hashem, to that divine core in everything and in each of us as human beings, no matter how that may manifest or present itself. That's liberation, that's freedom, that's health, and that's a meaningful life. In the future, all fact will be in harmony with truth, as it says, God will be one on that day, and his name will be one. May it happen soon. Shabbat Shalom.